And it's true that the needs of the clients do vary. However, I think our approach is standard, and that's a good thing. I think one of the ways that I equate our approach to sort of resolving design issues for each client, if you consider how you go about, for instance, if you're building a home, right? You have to survey the land, you have to make sure that that's correct, you're building a foundation, you're putting up the framework. There's an awful lot of work that goes in to the actual development of the house. What people see at the when they arrive there is this beautiful home. It's what's behind the scenes that actually makes it a successful building project. And I think we're very much along those lines, which is you might ultimately see the website as the sort of beautiful presence on the web. Ultimately, the success of that and determining what the client's needs are, that's what makes that successful. Yes, as a designer, we have to put it in a framework that's beautiful, that's just visually appealing. But I dare say you can create visually appealing and wonderful looking websites that ultimately are not effective. And that's because I think we're, and I would say that in all honesty, we were not always this company. But what we've come to understand especially over the last several years, is the discovery process and understanding the client's needs ultimately, and it sort of pains me as a designer to say this, but ultimately trump a beautiful website. Let's make sure that it's functional. Let's make sure that we have accommodated the business needs of the client. And ultimately, and I think if you surveyed any clients that we've worked with, it's almost sort of like an emagine mantra, which is we're saying, it's not about what you like, it's not about what I like, even though that question is asked for some reason. It's about understanding your business needs and then understanding your client's needs. And I think if we do enough deep digging at the beginning of a project and we understand what those things are, the website will be successful. I feel confident enough in the talent that we have here at Imagine from a design perspective that we can meet those sort of parameters in terms of yes, it needs to look like, and sort of fill in the blanks from there. But like I said, I think it's really in our research and understanding of client and customer needs that make the website a successful project. So looking at it more from, we've talked about all of the, the research and the underpinning good UX and so forth. So let's say we've accomplished that. The part of the process then as a designer, so let's say at this point we have established who you are, what your goals are and so forth. We've created wireframe for you. That goes backwards and forwards. So ultimately we've determined what content needs to go in your site, what the priority of that content is. And then at that point we really come to, I guess, sort of the fun part, where we're then designing. So slightly different, that to me is almost sort of a right brain, left brain thing, right? So all of the sort of the data has now been poured in. You're utilizing that as a designer, but now once again, now you need to get out your paintbrushes and start talking about color and aesthetic. I think the one thing that I always caution, and I'd say that's a good word to use, but one thing that I always caution clients is the idea of creating a web presence that primarily takes its visual cues from everybody else out there. This is something as just, maybe Imagine as a company, but very specifically for me as a designer, I am very reluctant to do, because I think each company, each thing that they do is so overtly unique that the idea that you're now drawing on something that somebody else has done to accomplish your needs, it's from a design and an aesthetic standpoint, it's going to fail. You are going to be content with doing something that somebody else has done. The reason that they did it, hopefully the reason that they did it, is because their needs were very specific and they designed to that. That may not be the case, but the one thing that you don't need to do at that point is to follow. I think we have clients that are doing incredibly unique things. They're curing cancer, they're causing people to walk again. Just amazing, just things that are sort of mind-blowing even when you first go in there. So we know that they have a unique story. We need to pull that out of them sometimes. Sometimes they'll actually say, oh, we're a lot like Company X. I disagree with that in general. I think that if we get the right people in the room and try to pull those stories out of them, we'll find that they are a unique company. And that's what I want to portray to the world. Here is a company that is incredibly unique, and we're designing to those parameters. We just have to find it. Like I said, I think that's part of our process. So as a designer, I've had people go before me. I've had Tim go in there from a UX perspective. I've had David go in there and do a whole bunch of research. I've had our entire digital marketing department look at the project before I even begin to start. I draw upon all that, and ultimately, once I found that story, I think that's my job as a designer then, is to put that in a format where people arrive at the site and they say, wow, here's an incredibly unique company, and that aesthetic has to reflect that. The challenge is an interesting word, I think, from a design perspective. I have, so sort of confession, I've definitely done design projects where I'm drawing very specifically from previous design projects that I've worked on. There are certain trends, there are certain looks that happen in web design, and some clients are very adamant about following those. So that's fine. The client has something very particular in mind. Where the challenge comes in then is to take even something that we would consider a web design trend and turn it around in a way where it's still obvious that we're part of that trend, but we're providing something unique for the client. The challenge oftentimes with, I think the design department finds this in general, is when we are then taking that design and we're having it critiqued, reviewed by a group of people. That's a very difficult scenario sometimes, because you're going to have 4 or 5 completely different opinions in the room. And this is almost worst case scenario, is taking all of those opinions and drawing them together and then presenting a design back in order to placate that group. I think one of the things we're going to bring to the table is the idea that if we can meet the goals, if we can meet the needs, the pain points of your customer within the design itself, trust us, it will be an incredibly effective web presence. And that's part of the education process that we bring to the client. We have to truly make them understand it's not about what they want, not from a visual standpoint, from a business perspective and all of the goals and everything else, absolutely, but visually and from a design perspective, it's meeting the needs of your clients. And that's where I think there's a tremendous amount of trust. They have to understand we've been in the business for over 20 years. There are very few companies that can even say that. We have a tremendous amount of experience. We bring that to the table, and it's a level of trust. Once again, I understand it's when you're working on a new project, sometimes it's difficult, but you've chosen us for a reason. Allow us to do what we do best. And once you've done that, I think invariably you can pull literally any client we've worked with, and ultimately they're going to tell you that, yeah, Emagine pushes back a little bit, but that's a good thing, because ultimately we want what's best for you and what's best for your clients. I would say that, so once again, I've been talking specifically about the design department, and you can't take, and imagine we have, various pods of people doing different things. Each one of those bringing a strength ultimately to the end project. If as a designer, if as a digital marketer, a salesperson, whatever it is, if you're not given the freedom to do what you do best, if you're not given the freedom to, I have certain strengths, but if the company wants a certain thing and we have all got to march to the same tune, especially from a creative perspective, it's just never going to happen. And that's why I'm very honest, and I'll talk about Bill and Brett and what they allow you to do is they're very much, unleash them and let them go. Let them do. I can't think of a scenario where I have come to the leadership of this company and said, I have this idea, and it's like, pursue it and see what happens. It's never closed down. It's, and this is sort of a funny thing in some ways, they will allow you to fail. I think it'd be very easy as, leadership of this company to say, it will not work. Don't even try it. Give it a shot. If it fails, fine. It's not the end of the world. But ultimately, by doing those things, by trying those things, my goals for even my department, they're almost changing on like a monthly basis. Something new comes up, I get new ideas that have got nothing to do with web design. But I'm thinking, there's something there, let's pursue it. There's so many dead ends when we've done those things. But once again, what I appreciate about this company is they allow you to find out where those are. And sometimes we just sort of bust through those things and create stuff, and it's like, well, that was very much worthwhile. So yeah, I think just the company philosophy, whether it's even a philosophy, it's just the sort of the emagine way. Go out, do it, give it a shot. If it works, great. If it's not, it's find the next best thing. So yeah, it's part of it.